Folks, if you did not know that or never really heard of Evan Dorkin, have you ever watched the show Space Ghost, Coast
Yeah,
to Coast?
yeah, he did. Yeah, he did a lot of the episodes. Yeah, I'm gonna get into that. I'm gonna get into his filmography as well as the comic book stuff.
All right, then
We're probably gonna hear me repeating.
what are you waiting for? Let's get into
So
it.
hey guys, and welcome back. I am back again with Mr. Cool himself, the one and only Mr. John Nance. How you doing, my friend?
Hey, what's up, buddy? Oh man, woo! I wish I had $10 million. Life would be so much easier. But
Isn't
what
it
do you
always
do?
easier? Isn't it always easier if someone gives you
Yeah,
$10?
yeah. What do you do?
At this point, I'd be happy if someone gave me $10. A beggar can't be choosers. I'll take what I can get. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's like when people say, "Man, I wish I was young again," and I'm like, hell with that. I wish I was 10 minutes younger. What are you talking about?
Seriously, man. Like, well, we were joking off camera, like just having an extra 30 minutes to your day, just
Yeah.
30 minutes more where you can be like, screw you, world. This is my 30 minutes.
Exactly right. Leave me alone. Leave me alone.
That is the concurrent theme in my life lately. Not enough time in the fucking day. Which that brings us today's episode, guys. Today we're back with a comic book episode, and today we're heading back to the 90s. That's right, folks. My teen years. And we're layering on some cheese. And while we're there, we're bringing on some milk because you got to have a little milk to go with your cheese. Today, we're going to talk to you guys about a comic book that is near and dear to my heart. A comic book that I discovered, well, a guy that I discovered who writes many comic books called Evan Dorkin. He just recently released a graphic novel that was published by Dark Horse called Nerd Inferno, which is a massive 650-page volume of a lot of his big indie work that he did back in the day. And that includes Milk and Cheese and the Eltingville Science Fiction Horror Club, the Murder Family, and a bunch of other stuff. We're not going to touch on all of it. We're going to touch on a little bit on Milk and Cheese, a little bit on the Murder Family, and a little bit on the Eltingville Family Science Fiction Horror Club. I got the name wrong, and it's okay.
Yeah, it's okay. That's all right.
It's a long title. It's a little bit of a tongue twister.
And that book is massive. Holy cow, folks. On the very back cover, it actually says, like, very, very, very fine print that this collection of work can be used as a weapon, because that book is freaking massive. Holy cow.
It absolutely is, dude. It absolutely is. But it was one of those things that, dude, I think, like, a lot of people, like you, we were again talking off camera, and I don't want to give away too much of your thoughts, obviously, but you were saying how you were more familiar with some of his later work. But a lot of his indie work, like the early days, just a lot of people don't know about. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I thought it'd be an interesting opportunity to just kind of, like, number one, introduce you to it and some of the earlier works, and hopefully maybe inspire some of our audience members, but also just talk about something that I think is definitely worth people's time. If you like to laugh, I think you're going to dig it. I came upon this as a freshman in high school, the very first issue of Milk and Cheese. My local comic book shop, like a lot of comic book shops, and hopefully your comic book shop isn't like mine, it had one decent sized shelf that was dedicated to stuff like ElfQuest. You might find, like, The Mask. You might find Sin City. You might find a handful of other indie books, but primarily it was just this one shelf. And the rest of the store was, there's nothing wrong with this. They got to go with what sells. Was your X-Men, your Superman, your Spider-Man, all the titles that were released by our big blockbuster companies, Marvel and DC. But lo and behold, I came across this title one day, and I'm like, it's basically depicted this wedge of cheese, animated, very weird look on his face and this carton of milk. And on the front of the cover, and I tried to find my very first issue because I have it somewhere. It says "Dairy Products Gone Bad." And they're holding like broken glass bottles, and they both look like they're ready to terrorize anyone that gets in their path. And I was probably 13, 14 years old because this is 89. And I saw that and I was like, what in the hell is this? And I knew that I had to spend, I think at the time it was $2.50 for an indie book, a little more expensive than your Marvel or DC, because Marvel and DC at that time was probably like 75 cents, maybe $1. But I was like, my curiosity, I have to see what is inside this magical book with these ridiculously terroristic looking characters on the front cover. And needless to say, I read that first issue so many times. My best friend Daryl, sadly no longer with us, I gave that to him, and same thing. We both were just like two kids just cracking up at this ridiculously over the top, violent, and anarchist comic book. It was just the craziest thing I've ever had been introduced to at that point, because I had grown up used to reading like, your Archies, your Jugheads, Marvel Tales, Peter Parker, Spectacular Spider-Man, like Ghost Rider, all that kind of stuff. And then here I am like looking at this and I'm like, what in the actual fuck am I reading? Yeah. So yeah, that was my first real introduction, and probably one of my first introductions to the world of like indie comics. I don't know if it was my very first, but it was probably one of my first indie comics that I read, and just being like, I need more. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I need more of this. It's completely different than anything I've ever read before. Now, you said you came across some of his, and I don't want to speak on your behalf, but you said you came across some of his stuff later on, right? Some of the titles you said you had possibly read, I thought maybe.
I can neither confirm or deny these facts. Oh, wait, I'm not testifying before Congress. No,
you're good. Yeah. No one's going to tap your phone.
No, yeah, right. I mean, so I kind of picked up on his work. Again, we talked about The Mask and his involvement with that. Mm. Some of the other works through Dark Horse, right? And like I said, for me, I didn't pick up Milk and Cheese because back then it just depended on the comic shop I was going to, right? And back in that era, I want to say there was only like 2 comic shops I went to. One was in Laurel, Maryland, right there in Main Street. I don't think they're around anymore. And another one I know is definitely not around. It was like right by my old high school. So, after school, I would drive over there to see what was new. But there, like, as you said, right, the choices of indie comics was not, there was not a plethora.
No.
Right? They did not know what a plethora is. But, but what I did know of him, again, through like The Mask, but it was kind of Predator Big Game, right? It was a 4-issue miniseries coming out from Dark Horse, and I want to say he was involved with another one called Predator's Bad Blood. Okay. But I thought it was great, right? I mean, from the story to the art, I dug it, right? Because it was gritty, right? It was Predator-like.
Yeah.
But then I found out that he was also involved in, I guess, our 2 characters that we talked about, right? When we talk about Bill and Ted.
Yeah,
right.
Dude, I love that. That was a Marvel comic book.
It was,
and that was a good series, man.
They did. He was involved with the Bill and Ted Bogus Journey comic translation from the movie.
Yeah,
and then they did, Bill and Ted's excellent comic, right? Yeah. And it was just from there. It was like, wow, what's going on? Then I come to find out, again, he's like, I guess Dark Horse treated him well or gave him a little bit more creative freedom. Because, I mean, let's face it, folks, you're a DC Marvel. There's a reason why Image Comics was born back in the 90s. Yeah. So, to see him do a lot of other stuff back there was just fantastic. I'm going to say it, right? He is really an artist in pretty much every sense of the word, and I'll explain a little bit later.
Yeah, I mean, writer and artist, which is really cool. He's the double threat, which that's a tough one to pull off. It's one thing to be able to have the ability to craft a story. It's another thing to be able to have a degree of ability to actually draw to go with that. Which I
right. And his wife, is it Susan?
Sarah Dreyer. Yes,
Sarah. Yes. Yeah. They team up, kind of like Walt and what's her name, Simonson. over at DC, right? They were a duo that really did a lot of writing. And folks, if you did not know that or never really heard of Evan Dorkin, have you ever watched the show Space Ghost, Coast
Yeah.
to Coast?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did a lot of the episodes. Yeah. I'm gonna get into that. I'm gonna get into his filmography as well as the comic book stuff.
All right, then
We're probably gonna hear me repeating.
What are you waiting for? Let's get into it.
So he was born in Brooklyn, moved to Staten Island when he was 13. Like a lot of us, he grew up reading a steady diet of superhero comic books, mostly Marvel. That was who he was loyal to, but he did like some DC stuff. Mad Magazine, because what kid didn't like Mad Magazine if you're a kid? So, like myself, a lot of Archie comic books and a lot of the old Harvey comics. When he was a teenager, he actually took an animation class in his high school. He tried to get into the School of Visual Arts to pursue a career in animation, but sadly, he was not accepted. But there's a happy story. He did eventually ended up getting into the Tisch School of University of Visual Arts and Animation. But when he was there, he realized, you know what? I think I want to do comic books instead. So what's interesting is his earliest work was solo comics. He published called Pirate Corps, which was later renamed Hectic Planet. And that was published by a small independent publisher. They were kind of here and gone. I remember owning a couple of comic books called Eternity Comics, excuse me. And then later, Slave Labor Graphics from 87 to 89. And that would be Milk and Cheese. He would, before he went from Eternity Comics to Slave Labor Graphics, he would continue to do these Milk and Cheese doodles. And then eventually, when Slave Labor Graphics, the company, started up, he had a collection. And basically, he just said, hey, here's a collection. That'll be a good first issue. He was actually first published, and this I thought was kind of cool, in the letters page of Rom the Space Knight. I don't know how many have read that.
Oh,
yeah.
Awesome.
He wrote in, I guess, a fan mail that has a little drawing, and that was where technically he was first published. Like I said, he would go on to do stuff like The Real Ghostbusters for the Now Comics, Wild Nights. We're talking about Eternity Comics. Like you were talking about for Dark Horse, Predator, Big Game. Again, like you mentioned, Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, and then Bill and Ted's comic book, Predator Bad Blood, like you also had mentioned. He did Dork for Slave Labor, and that was from 1993 all the way up till present day. And then eventually he transitioned that over to Dark Horse. Mm-hmm. And what's interesting, he actually does do some mainstream stuff. So he does dip his toe in with DC for Justice League. He did one of their annuals. He did The Mask, like you mentioned as well, and a bunch of Superman comics and some Bizarro comics, Captain America. He even worked on The Thing of all things. The Thing of all things. And one that I just started reading. I started reading this series years ago, and then unfortunately I just never got back to it. Beasts of Burden, also for Dark Horse. He did that with Jill Thompson, who's another big person in the indie world of comics, and also he worked with his wife, like we mentioned, Sarah, who is a big part of a lot of his comic books. She worked as she did the coloring, on a lot of the comic books, but she also co-wrote a lot of comic books with him. And one of the Beasts of Burden issues was pretty cool because if you're like me, you love Hellboy. Mike Mignola actually collaborated him on one of the Beast of Burden issues.
Yep.
Now, on top of that, he also did the Eltingville Club for Dark Horse Comics, as well as his comics Dorkin, and his wife also did do stuff for like the Cartoon Network, like we were just talking about, Space Ghost, Coast to Coast. He wrote quite a few of those episodes.
Oh yeah. He
also wrote for Superman the Animated Series from 1997 to 1998. And now I haven't tried to find this, but I'm sure it's out there somewhere on the web. He did a pilot episode for the Eltingville Club, which came out in 2002. Now, I don't know if it ever got released on the Cartoon Network or if it's one of those things, if you look on the web, you might be able to just find it somewhere.
I I think it's on the Tube of You. So,
Oh, okay. Well, then I'll have to check it out.
yep.
So he did that. Now, I never watched Ben 10. Everyone says I should be, but he did a
Oh,
bunch of episodes for Ben 10.
oh, Ben 10 was awesome. My son loved that growing up.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
It's good.
It looked cool. It looked really cool.
It was really cool.
And then something called Yo Gabba Gabba. So here's one more, and then we'll actually get into the meat of things here. He also, with his wife, contributed to the script for the 2006 English language version of the anime Shin-Chan. Never heard of that one, but yeah, so he also did that as well. Yep. Now, this guy, again, not to tote everyone, go, woo, Mr. Evan Dorkin, but, so we've talked about before in our comic book episodes, probably the biggest awards you can probably win in the world of comic books, probably either the Harvey Awards or the Eisner Awards. Basically, in the world of comic book nerdery, this is the equivalent of winning the Pulitzer Prize, or basically the Academy Award, would be the equivalent. This guy, bang, bang, one after the other. 1996, Eisner Award for Best Short Story for the Eltingville Club for Bring Me the Head of Boba Fett. 1998, Eisner Award, Best Short Story for the Eltingville Club, The Marathon Man. 2001, Harvey Award for the Best Single Issue, Superman and Batman, World's Finest. There you go. Something different. 2002, Eisner Award for Best Writer Artist for Dork. Eltingville Club Intervention, issue number 9. 2005 Eisner Award for Best Short Story for Unfamiliar with Jill Thompson. And 2010 Eisner Award for Best Publication for Teens for Beast of Burden. And 2015 Eisner Award for one Best Single Issue for Beast of Burden. Hunter and Gatherers with Jill Thompson. And then right now, currently, just for the current stuff, he's currently writing for Omni Press. I did not know that the Omni Press did this, but apparently they're reviving the EC Comics horror line, which I think is pretty cool. I did not know about that. And he's heading that. Also, EC Comics Catacomb of Torment. And apparently he's worked on Elseworlds Justice League Omnibus. And I didn't even know they still did Elseworlds. I'm excited because that to me, like Elseworlds was kind of like what Marvel's version was What If. But I always thought, while the What Ifs were really fun, I felt like the Elseworlds, they kind of took it a little bit more seriously. They still had fun. And they came out with some really good Elseworlds. That was one of those things when I collected like on a monthly basis, I would always pick up the Elseworlds.
Oh yeah.
I love that stuff.
I was going to say the other big time contribution to those of us geeks and nerds who like to do the role playing games like Dungeons and Dragons or Shadow Dark or such like that. He was actually involved with, how many folks remember GURPS? The generic universal role-playing system.
Oh, okay.
So he did some artwork for, I believe it was medieval times and Middle Ages or something like that. So yeah, this guy was again recognized as someone that you would like to work with and you want to get some of his artwork in. And he was just all over the place. Right. And whether it was, again, artwork, but more importantly, as you said, getting into later in the more recent stuff, writing, which could be fun in itself. Right.
Yeah. What's unique about him is like he'll make fun of the nerd culture and he'll poke fun at, which I don't personally have a problem. I know some people are a little sensitive to that. At the same time that he's poking fun of the nerd culture and a lot of his material, he's also self-admitted a huge nerd. You know what I mean? So he's having fun with what he's doing. You know what I mean? Poking fun at, but also perfectly willing to acknowledge, like, hey, I'm a huge nerd. You know what I mean? And that's one of the things I adore about his personality. And I think the stuff that's reflected in his writing,
Yeah.
So Milk and Cheese began as a joke, believe it or not, involving two of his friends. It started by him like going to the bars, and afterwards they'd go to a diner and they'd hang out, and he's found himself drawing little cheeses on cocktail napkins. And then from there, one night at a restaurant, he scribbled a little milk character right next to the cheese character. And basically, he started doing it so the characters were holding things, and they were basically both holding like broken beer bottles, and they were looking angry, and like they wanted to take on the world essentially. So that's how it started. He kept sketching, and the two characters. He kept sketching the two characters as he went to conventions, and one day there was a gentleman named Kurt Sayarga of a magazine called Greed Magazine. He saw them at a comic convention, and he's like, "Hey, Evan, would you like to showcase your work in my magazine?" So Evan did, and it just showed up in that one appearance. And then from there were several other indie zines, magazines, and comic books around that time that were like, "Hey, I love the milk and cheese thing you did. You want to do it in our comic book?" So basically, he did these strips independently on his own, getting them released in these little magazines and indie books. And then eventually, like I said, by the time he was approached by Slave Labor Graphics, he had enough pretty much for a first issue. And that's how Milk and Cheese, the origin story, started. Just bear with me for 1 second. Okay, so now I'm going to get into, so like I said, some highlights. Some of it I might go into a little more detail. Some things I'm just going to skim over. I'm not going to go over everything, guys, because there's a lot, and I don't think we really need to. I just want to give you guys a taste, in case you aren't familiar with Milk and Cheese. I want to kind of introduce you to the world and give you kind of a taste of the comic book. So the one I'm going to talk about first is called Rainy Day. And basically, again, look at the cover of this story, and it says dairy products gone bad. And again, you see these angry Milk and Cheese holding broken glass bottles, like I said, ready to take on the world. And it says underneath that, they're from Jersey. And one of the characters says, and we're sensitive about it. So no cracks. And I can relate to that, guys, because Jersey gets a lot of crap. Some of it completely deserved. Some of it maybe not so much deserved, But anyway, so this comic book starts off, and it's called No Talent Celebrity Tag. That's the name of the title. And the story opens up, and we see our titular characters, Milk and Cheese. Cheese is chasing Milk around. Now, here we go. This is kind of relevant because at the time, the guy was rich, and he had tons of property. The Trump Shopping Plaza Mall, of all things. Cheese tags Milk and says, "Tag, you're it. You're Orson Bean." And Milk replies, "I don't even know who that is." And Cheese replies, "He's on game shows and does voiceovers." And then he tags him back. As Milk tags Cheese back, he says, "You're Nipsey Russell." Cheese says, "No, not him. Not the poet laureate Nipsey Russell." The chase continues as they terrorize anyone that gets in their way. They're finally confronted by a cop who confronts them about their path of terror and mayhem as they destroy everything in their way. And basically, he points to a wall that shows, basically it says, "Donald Trump has a stinky butt." And then it's at the bottom, it's signed by Cheese. And the cops try to arrest them, but they fight back, saying, "Viva Revolution," because they feel like they're being harassed by the man. So from there on, they decide to start a revolution, and they continue their path of terror. You see all sorts of little things in this one page. He's very effective in getting a lot done in a very short amount of time, Evan Dorkin. And on this one page, just some examples of some things you see. You see them pushing a man into the path of an oncoming subway train. We see Milk loading a gun, and he's showing kids how to load a gun. The humor is very juvenile, and I will admit to that. But you know what? If you read enough of it, they do, besides poking fun of us comic book nerds, they are satiring a lot of stuff that at that time was relevant. Like they're talking about a lot of stuff at that time that was relevant. Now, they're not making any meaningful points. They're poking fun at it and making fun of the things that were happening. They're not trying to give us any deep message, obviously. It's a carton of expired milk, and a wedge of cheese violently terrorizing people. But if you accept that for what it is and embrace the juvenile infancy of this comic book, I think you're going to have a good time. I'm going to just go over a couple more of the milk and cheese things that I thought were fun, or that stick out. One is called, the next story is called Jury Duty. And it's just another day for milk and cheese when the mailman delivers their mail. And as the mailman goes to leave, he's running in terror as they're chasing him down the hallway, yelling at him, saying, "Hey, how come you never give us any good mail? Get back here." And basically, they throw a glass bottle at him. They take him to the ground. They start beating him up. And finally, when they open their crappy mail, what to their surprise do they see? But they find out they get jury duty notice. And like most people, if you've ever gotten the wonderful surprise that is jury duty, hopefully you haven't. Somehow or another, I don't know how, but I managed not to get any notices, and I shouldn't open my mouth.
Yeah.
For jury duty in all my years. I don't know how I managed to avoid it.
Well, you're going to get some now, because I know. I swear to God, it was, I don't know what I did wrong, but there was one year I got one for federal jury duty. Same year I got one for state jury duty.
Oh wow.
And that same year I got one for county jury duty. Oh my God. Wouldn't you know it, the county jury duty is the one I got picked to serve on a jury. So yeah, fun.
Oh, I can only imagine. I can only imagine. There's still, the quick way to get out of it is just being like, yes, I hate everyone. I think he's guilty.
The voir dire process during that was not that involved, but let's put it this way. I was part of 12 folks who sent a guy to jail. So what do you know?
Listen, if he deserved it, the hell with him. You know what I mean? Sometimes, you do the time, you do the crime, you pay the time. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. So
from here, the story, most people would be unexcited about jury duty notice. They're very excited. They're like, hell yeah, So they get to court, and of course, they're in that selection process where the judge is picking jurors. I can make words today, guys, I promise. And the judge says he's not sure about these two as he's pointing to milk and cheese because they look like they're trouble. And they threaten him. Basically, they say, we'll peel your face open like an onion and feed it to the sewer rats that are the number one train if you don't pick us. Yeah. So from there, feeling threatened, they decide to pick milk and cheese as potential jurors. But what they realize early on is that being in court is rather boring, and you have to sit through a lot of bullshit. And,
oh God, yes.
They keep on interrupting all the court proceedings, and eventually the judge says, if you keep this up and you open your mouth one more time, I'm going to hold you in contempt. And Cheese blurts out, "You can't hold me there. That's illegal."
Yeah.
So from there, Milk and Cheese take the law into their own hands as they attack everyone in the court. And basically it ends with Milk and Cheese saying, "Remember, kids, there's no justice. There's just us." And that's for the most part, that's a little bit of a taste. Obviously, it's hard for me to go into every single little detail of the comic book, guys, and I don't want to either because I don't want to ruin some of the surprise. I think there's a lot of surprises, and like I said, if you have a juvenile sense of humor and you like to laugh at dumb shit, I think you're going to appreciate this. Other than that, there's a bunch of other strips in there. I'm not going to get into all of it because I do want to talk about a comic strip that he created called The Murder Family. The Murder Family, at its core, it's basically a satire poking fun at the 1950s and 1960s American sitcoms. So much so that it includes a canned laughter track. The twist being, of course, is the whole family are a bunch of serial killers, hence the title, The Murder Family. We're going to get into just a quick list of the characters. You have at the head of the family, Mr. Riley, otherwise known as Pa. He, like a lot of people, goes to his daily job every day while lecturing his kids on morality, but also hacking up bodies in the basement. Next up, we have Mrs. Riley, otherwise known as Ma. She's your typical prim and proper 1950s housewife, frequently preparing meals from human remains. So what's a little cannibalism thrown in for good fun, folks? When you're hungry, you got to eat.
Wow. They need to be hanging out with Crockett from A Boy and His Dog. What?
I know. I mean, seriously, they prepped for that post-apocalyptic world. You know what I mean?
Holy crap.
They are ready to go. Next up, we have the two teenage brothers. We have Dougie, who's basically the kind of company guy that gets bullied by his peers, but then bullies them back and, ends up killing them. And then we have Arnold, his nerdy brother, who hangs around with Dougie. We also have Harlan, who is their uncle, who's basically a depraved. Basically, the best way to describe him is, I would say, a depraved Uncle Fester. You think that Uncle Fester by himself is depraved enough, but I guess that would be the best way to describe him. So the title that I'm talking about is called April Funerals Day. It's not the first issue. I meant to do that, and I picked this one by accident. And I was like, fuck it, it doesn't matter. Basically, our story opens up, and we see the two teenage brothers, Dougie and Arnold. Arnold. And basically, they're looking at a dirty magazine. An older, balder, like I said, creepy Uncle Fester-looking guy comes in, and that's their Uncle Harlan. And he casually mentions he noticed the old man Hargraves from next door was nosing around in the backyard last night. Well, the two boys all of a sudden get concerned, and they decide they need to go have a talk with their neighbor. Now, as this is going on, the head of the family enters the room, Mr. and Mrs. Riley. Mr. Riley grabs the paper from outside, and on the front cover it says, "Local man sought for double slaying." He looks at it and a worried look on his face because he realizes that's him. So Harlan, again, the creepy Uncle Fester character, erupts into laughter, which pisses off Mr. Riley, going, "Well, what about you think this is so funny? That's me. They're gonna hang me, basically. I'm up Schitt's Creek." But Harlan confesses to printing up a fake novelty newspaper as a gag. It's an April Fool's Day joke, hence the name of the title. This comic strip, April Funerals Day. So while this is going on, and there's a little bit of relief knowing that his idiot brother or the uncle just played a joke on everybody, the teenage boys arrive back in the house, and wrapped up in a bundle, we see the dead body of their neighbor, Mr. Hargraves. Their mom and dad, at this point, proceed to lecture them, saying they don't have room for another dead body in the yard. The horror reveals that the neighbor wasn't nosing around in the yard last night. He made it all up. He promises no more jokes. That's it. He's done with his April funeral jokes. So the family is finally starting to get a little peace. They're starting to relax. But a few hours later, a detective knocks at the door, asking about their neighbor. The whole family, what do? Like any good family. Some people play board games. Some people sit around and watch the movie. They all pull out their knives and they all murder the shit out of this guy. And afterwards, as they're looking at him, they find a badge. But they're thinking, oh, that's that crazy Harlan up to shenanigans again. This is another one of his April Fool's Day jokes. So what do? They decide to play a joke on him. They get rid of the body, but they don't get rid of it. They decide to cook the body up because, they're cannibals and they got to eat. So later that night, the whole family, including Harlan, is eating dinner. And Miss Riley asks Harlan, she says, "Why haven't you touched your food? You barely touched your food." And Georgina, the young daughter of the family, blurts out, "Because his last April Fool's gag didn't go as well as he planned. We figured out it wasn't a real cop. Instead, someone that Harlan had paid to be, pretended to be a cop." And then Harlan proceeds to reply. He goes, "You know what? Well, that was the original plan. I did have a friend of mine that I paid off that was supposed to pretend to be a cop just to fuck with you guys. But unfortunately, he was arrested on arsonist charges for burning down an orphanage." So Harlan says, "Whole frame the murder on the guy that was supposed to do it." And basically, that's how this introduction to the murder family wraps up. And again, there's a bunch of comic strips and stories involving this family. If you do get Nerd Inferno, you can read it for free on Hoopla, which is great. I love Hoopla. Definitely saves you a lot of money. or you can pick it up on Amazon. It's like $32, so it's definitely worth it if you have a little extra cash. Which brings us to the final title I'm going to talk to you guys about today, which is the Eltingville Comic Book Science Fiction Fantasy Horror and Role Playing Club. And now I don't feel about the title of our show, and now for something a little bit different, because I've heard shit from some of our friends because it's a hard title to wrap your head around, or it's a little bit of a tongue twister. I don't feel as guilty after reading that one off. So this one, you have four groups, four characters. They're teenage guys, most of them living at home. They're all nerds. The one character is Bill. He's the secretary of comics. Josh, he's the secretary of science fiction. Pete, he's the secretary of horror. And Jerry, he's the secretary of fantasy and gaming. So as the meeting begins, we see them in one of their basements, Bill's basement. Bill, the secretary of comic books, reminds everyone that they're already 5 minutes behind their schedule, and they need to get their shit together and keep the meeting moving, basically. They start the meeting, and Bill's talking, and they talk by revisiting The Crow in theaters. Basically, how the story and the acting wasn't so hot, and the direction was shit, but the sets were really cool, and Brandon Lee died for real as The Crow, and that's weird and cool in a way. I know, I'm shaking my head. At the same time, like, these fucking bastards, they're giving us all us nerds a bad name. Some of us deserve it, but they're really throwing us to the shit here. Bill continuing, he says, then we ate at Burger King, and we got Lion King toys and talked about getting jobs at hobby shops and comic stores, but having no luck with that, most of them going out of business, which sad to say. I hate to say it. That's definitely become more prevalent. We have one comic book shop, and I live in a pretty big town. I don't know how they're surviving. And forget about hobby shops. If you want to go to a hobby shop, you got to travel like 45 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's slim pickings. So as the meeting continues, they talk about the news of a new Batman movie and the proper way to pronounce director John Woo's name. Some claiming it's John Woo.
It's not Latin. Oh, Jesus.
So these are the kind of nerdy conversations when you get four nerds together in a room. So from there, they talk about stuff like the casting of Lestat. Pete's secretary of horror insisting they go with Christopher Lee, but everyone else saying, no, he's too old. Yes, we know he's a legend and he did Hammer horror and everybody loves Christopher Lee, but he's too damn old to be playing Lestat, goddammit. So the night continues, and they talk about their most recent acquisitions or pickups. And Jerry is sharing a bunch of old Marvel comics he got from the 70s. He got super cheap. And he thought it was a great deal until he opened it up and found out in the back the Marvel value stamps were all cut out. So there's a reason why sometimes you get things too cheap, guys. And this is it. Pete shows off his bootleg copy of City Hunter with Jackie Chan from some guy in Jersey for only $25. The picture's kind of grainy and the subtitles are hard to read, but he only paid $25. But remember, guys, back in the day, I don't know about you, Mr. Cool, but back in the day, that stuff was hard to come by. Now, again, I'm not promoting bootlegging, guys. I'm not doing that. But I'm saying, like, back then, we are so spoiled. Like, a couple episodes ago, we talked about that super massive deluxe Arrow and Jackie Chan 4K set that's coming out. Back in the day, you were lucky if you could get a hold of a grainy bootleg Jackie Chan City Hunter. You know what I mean? So
that's why, I'm always a big proponent for physical media. Folks, back in the day, you were lucky if someone had it. Hell, even on Betamax.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Those old tapes or VHS, because they were just absolutely, there was no streaming, folks.
Yeah.
No. We still had to drive to a different part of town to figure out what's going on. No real internet. No. It was hard. Well, I don't know how we survived.
No, I mean, seriously, dude. I mean, again, I'm not a fan of like bootlegging per se, but like, yeah, dude, back in the day, you were lucky if you got a hold of something like that through that. And like you said, even though it seems like $25 back then, that would be a lot of money for but you were just so grateful to have that shiny object in your hands because you just couldn't get a hold of it otherwise, you know? Yeah. I know my friend, he was in the military, and he was lucky enough to be stationed, lucky bastard, in Fort Hamilton, Brooklyn. And what was cool about being stationed there, number one, it was easy. Number two, he got a bunch of like free Broadway tickets because they give them to the troops. But there was a street in Brooklyn called Fulton Street. And on Fulton Street, you could find anything and everything. So that's how, I hate to say it, again, since then I have bought two very legal copies of Crying Freeman live action. I have. I bought the DVD when it first came out, very first. And then recently I bought the Blu-ray Steelbook. But that was how I saw the live action adaptation of Crying Freeman, sadly, just because there was no limited release. There was no VHS release. There was nothing. That's how you had to do it, you know? And again, I'm not, by any means, I'm not promoting this at all, but that was just the way things went back in the day. Continuing from there, Joss, Secretary of Science Fiction, brags about after visiting 30 McDonald's, how he finally has the complete Animaniacs Happy Meal toys. to which his friend says, "No wonder why you got so fat. You keep on eating all those Happy Meals to get all those toys."
Yeah, because he didn't eat them all just because he was happy.
No, he was eating them because he wanted those toys. Damn it! He also shows off his bootleg tape of Sexy Damsels of Sci-Fi and Horror Revealed. From there, the group gets into a game of D&D where they encounter a sexy barmaid. Josh rolls to seduce her and fails horribly. Just after that, Jerry blurts out, "Do any of you realize that tonight is our prom?" And what is there? Nothing but complete silence. Because after all these nerds are doing their geekery and talking about their nerdery and getting into their arguments about whether the Crow is good or not, or how to get the bootleg copy of City Hunter or the Happy Meal toys, there's a moment of quietness because you realize it's probably a weekend. These kids are in high school, and what are they doing? Like all nerds, they're not thinking about the prom because they're not going to ever get dates to the prom. Instead, they're playing Dungeons and Dragons in in Bill's basement, you know, on a Saturday night. So they all completely ignore this. They continue the night trying to watch the Sexy Dames of Sci-Fi and Horror tape, but they soon realize Josh got screwed because it's just a tape with midgets dancing in hot suits. They make fun of Josh, pushing him over the edge, and this is where he finally loses it and he goes to choke out Jerry. Bill's mom yells downstairs, "I told you kids to be quiet. That's it. I've had enough. You're out of here." So she kicks him out of the basement, and everybody goes to their own house for being too noisy. Each one of the guys tries to go to sleep, but can't, upset about the fight, wondering if that's the end of the Eltingville Horror Science Fiction Role-Playing Club. I don't want to give you everything, guys, and there's a lot of different comic strips talking about this group, and they're all pretty much similar in the sense that they tap into that what it was like to some degree to be a nerd. Obviously, they're exaggerating. Thankfully, me or none of my friends were that bad. But I do remember, for example, getting into like D&D sessions where we'd be trying to do some ridiculous thing and completely failing, you know, like rolling the dice and completely losing our saving throw and either completely dying or just making an ass of myself. I do remember getting into nerdy conversations about stuff like the Crow. I mean, I don't think I shit on the Crow. I thought at the time I really, really liked it. I still really do like it. Obviously, this stuff is all exaggerated. And like Evan Dorkin said himself, the idea is that he pokes fun at these people, obviously, but it's done, even though it may not come off that way. It might come off a little bit abrasive. It's done in a loving manner because he ultimately is a huge nerd, you know. And these are probably conversations that, yeah, he probably took from real life and then exaggerated for comedy's sake. But that all said, I've done a lot of talking. For the most part, this is kind of like your introduction to this world of these characters and these stories. What were your thoughts after you read everything?
So, thoughts. There were a many.
Uh-oh.
But reading through Milk and Cheese, Murder Family, Eltingville Club, um, that was Evan Dorkin,
Yeah.
right? It was one of those things that I had mad respect that he would put to paper through words and his artwork, his thoughts and feelings, right? Milk and Cheese, yeah, he's poking at whatever was happening at that time and day.
Yeah.
Murder Family, that was just a whole bottle of. He must have been smoking a lot of pot. But I get, yeah, he was just making fun of all the sitcoms and stuff going right then and there. Eltingtonville, it was a little interesting. I watched an interview where he was actually talking about that. Or no, I stand corrected. I read the end of the omnibus and where he talked about his rationale why, and you're right. He's poking fun at some of the fandom that is out there, right? Most folks would say, uh, I guess to use the language of today's youth, they were just toxic,
Yeah.
right? It's just,
Absolutely.
and as bad as it was back then, because he's right, there was just some folks back there, just wow, holy shnikes. But today, it's so much worse
Sadly. Yeah.
because of the internet, social
Yeah.
media, quick access to drop your thoughts um, with a lot of anonymity. Whereas back in his day, they had to write letters or go to a convention, right?
Yeah.
I get it, right? But it's still a little bit spot on and smart in the way he puts it, because it's like, hey, if you're getting pissed off at this, well, it goes back to that old Ben Franklin saying, right? If what I say stings, then it rings a little bit of the truth, right?
Yeah.
So hey, take a look in the mirror once in a while.
Yeah.
Now, in the totality of what I read, because we talked off camera, right? Milk and Cheese back then, it was just a very, very selective on what I was picking up back then.
Absolutely. Especially when you're working on a budget. I get it. Trust me.
Right, especially on a budget, and especially because again, you only had two shops that I visited, and it was sparse.
Yeah.
What sold or what was selling from that publisher is what got the shelf space.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
But I understand, Milk and Cheese is still popular with a lot of folks today, which is great, because again, that's where I have the appreciation, right? Back then, he took his thoughts, his feelings, and he put it down on paper,
Yeah.
and then he published it. And by the way, he stuck his finger in your eye if you got mad at or didn't like some of the stuff that he was writing because it kind of rang a little bit of the truth. Well, that was the whole point, right?
Absolutely.
That was the whole point. So I'm very much respect him for that. Now, again, I'll say, did I like vast majority of it? Yeah. Did I like all of it? No. Well, who does, right? It's always a hit or miss depending on the topic or depending on the mood. And I will say this, because this is not his fault whatsoever, right? When you read, like I was reading it through Hoopla, right? Just on my tablet when I made time for myself to sit down and read.
Yeah.
There's just so much, right? It's not like the days of comic books as we were collecting them, right? Which is you got a brand new issue. It just came out. You get to sit time and read it right then and there, and then you had to wait a whole nother month. Right. So when you try to read it going back to back to back to back to back, it gets again, through no fault of his own, it gets kind of tiresome, right? Because it's like, okay, I'm laughed out a little bit. Oh, there's more. Okay, let's keep going. So, folks, if you pick it up, which I would recommend you do, pace yourselves, right?
Yeah.
Pace yourselves as if you were collecting the comics back then. Read one or two at a time, and then move on. Right?
Yeah.
Don't try to devour the whole thing. Lastly, diving back into again his footprint, not only in the comics but the animated world. We talk Space Ghost and stuff like that. I watched several of his interviews on YouTube because a lot of folks. He still has a very large following today, right?
Oh yeah, and he's still been doing it. I mean, he's still doing stuff.
He's still doing it, right?
Yeah.
It's really interesting, and to hear again, and we talked about it through some other, either whether it was a TV show or a movie.
Mm,
Mad respect that, you know what, he finally got to a point. He's like, I don't care. I don't care what people want or think I should do or think a character should be or a setting should be. This is what we're putting out,
yeah,
and you either like it or you don't. And that's the way it should be, right?
sure.
Um, everyone has an opinion. We have several opinions on,
Yeah,
depending on the topic or genre of
yeah,
whatever it is, but it doesn't mean that as a creator, you got to sit there and torture yourself um, to meet or I guess you could say, amuse the masses, right?
yeah.
Our buddy Harry Scott Sullivan just had his newest episode. I think he was talking with Jeremy
Berkowitz, yeah,
Berkowitz,
yeah.
and it's the same topic, ironically, right? Because there is a panel in that omnibus where it shows, I forget the title, but it's like a comic book artist dies, and he's dying at his easel table drawing, and it shows him pass away, and then his spirit leaves, and where does he end up? In hell, still drawing comics, right? I mean, that's the life of it.
Yeah.
The realization that, again, folks, yes, you might have ideas, you might have opinions, but you don't have the, I guess you could say, um, authority to dictate how something should be or should
Yeah.
have done or should evolve into. If you have ideas, like with anything, right? Put it to pen and paper or visualize it and send it off and see if your idea works, right? Art in its purest form is open to interpretation, and that's what he did. You mentioned it, right? He started off doodling on cocktail napkins. He turned a career out of it, right?
Yeah.
And it's just again, his comics are his thoughts. It is Evan Dorkin. You're seeing his thought processes, his feelings, his takes on certain situations. Folks have opinions. Fine, fine, right? But understand that sometimes your opinions, they just don't matter.
No, you're absolutely correct. You're
Okay.
absolutely. Yeah.
And to that point, and I will finish with this, right? Milk and cheese. People will ask, well, what's so bad about bad milk or cheese that has a little mold on it? Well, that's the take on the whole concept, right? It,
Yeah.
it kind of answers that question. What can it do? Yeah, shit, you might sit in jury duty. Who the hell knows? But yeah, I liked it enough, right?
Yeah.
But it's one of those things that I will say again, whether you buy it or you check it out on Hoopla. Again, folks, on Hoopla, it's free,
Yeah.
completely free.
Yeah.
Check it out, and if you decide you like it, support the guy.
Yeah.
Go out and purchase his novella. Yeah,
Yeah, definitely.
there
Absolutely.
you go.
No, I love it. I love the thoughts, man. And to touch on what you were saying as far as the original voice and liking it, like it or love it, right? It's like when we talk about with filmmakers, right? When we talk about our film episodes and we talk about the whole auteur thing, right? The difference is like sometimes these auteurs are still backed by studio money, so sometimes they don't have a choice because the producer tells them they have to change this or they change that. When you're working for a comic book, and especially on the indie level, usually because someone like him, he can draw, he can write, he can do everything on a tablet and then upload it. Like, you don't have as many people telling you like you have to change this, you have to appeal to these masses. You can have your own original voice. And like you said, some people are going to like it, some people aren't. But at the end of the day, I want to read someone's thoughts, whether it's a sci-fi, it's a comedy, whatever it is. I want to know that like what I'm reading is not what they're trying to feed the masses or what they think is cool at the moment or what the masses think is cool at the moment. But I want to hear your voice. Like if you're telling a story, whether it's a written novel, comic book, movie, whatever it is, I want to know your perspective. Whether I love it, hate it, or I'm in the middle, just the fact that we're getting your own unique voice, because we're all individuals and we all have our own unique voices. We've all had our life experiences, and taking that and distilling that, you're doing yourself a disservice. And the fact that he's not doing that, and he just says, screw it. If people like it, they like it. If people hate it, they hate it. If people are in the middle, they're in the middle. That's great. And we need more of those unique voices. And luckily, we've gotten to a point where we have a lot of those unique voices. But it's awesome to see that he's another one then that's what you're getting. You're getting a unique voice.
Yeah. The only problem that we have today, and he talks about it, is he's one of those unique voices that just will tell it just as we said, right? But then you're going to have those people that just go hyper ballistic when they do not like what they hear, right? Yeah. Folks, to hell with those people.
Just move on with your day. That's it.
Yeah, go on.
Control it. You can't control
go on. And if they get too uppity or they get too stupid, whoop their ass.
Absolutely. There you go. Next day, what's Memorial Day about? It's about whooping. Well, it's about Memorial, of course, but it's also to some degree, it's like, hey, people fighting for things they believe in,
Yes,
when you think about it. Exactly. And whether you're a writer, an artist, or someone that fought in a war, at the end of the day, people take the idea of fighting for things they believe in. And you should always do that, especially if you're not harming someone in the process of doing that. If you're not physically harming someone and you're defending your point of view, you should do that. You know what I mean? Yeah. And if people are saying things you don't like to hear, number one, remove them from your life. And if you can't remove them from your life, then just ignore it, man. Remember the days when we were kids and you didn't like something on TV? And I know we're old farts, so we can say this. What did you do? You
turned it off.
You changed the channel. You turned it off. Move on to the next thing. You know what I mean?
Go outside. Go somewhere.
Yeah, get some fresh air.
Or, and I will say, social media, as fun as it can be, man, folks, here's a challenge for you. Take a weekend where you're not on any social media whatsoever and fill it with other things that you would do. Just go to like a topiary or a museum or something. You'll be surprised.
Yeah, and it's
be surprised.
So yesterday, I challenged myself. So I said earlier in the episode, I'd read some of the Beast of Burden, but I hadn't read all of it. And they also have the complete Beast of Burden by Evan Dorkin on Hoopla. Yeah. So I got up in the morning. I slept in for the first time, and God knows. And when I say slept in, for me, that's 9 o'clock. That's sleeping in.
Wow.
I know. But what was nice is I got up, I had my coffee, I made myself some breakfast, and I didn't go near my TV. Now, I did go near my TV eventually, but I didn't go near my TV until almost 7 o'clock at night. Because what I do, I read my Beast of Burden. I did some research for this episode we're talking about. And I just got away from everything. I wasn't even looking at my phone 10 times, like I normally am. You know what I mean? And I tell you what, to your point, you'd be surprised. It's almost like a reset in your brain.
Yep.
And it's a healthy reset. So
it's a very, very healthy, especially mentally healthy reset.
Now, folks, just remember, before you do this healthy mental reset, make sure you check out our episodes. Make sure you watch our episodes and then you do the reset. That wraps up today's episode, guys. Again, we want to thank you guys very much for watching. I also, guys, I want to say something, and I'm sure John's on the same page. We're helping to build a community. And I think part of that is thanks to you guys, because I think some of you guys, some of our regular listeners that watch every week, are maybe spreading the word, and we want to thank you guys, especially some of you that have been here from the beginning. But even if you haven't been here since the beginning, like Troy, I know, and Brad have been here since the early days when I had my phone and my crappy tripod and no laptop and nothing, and there's quite a few of you that have been there since the beginning days. And a lot of you guys have been kind enough to say something nice about our episodes on your shows. A lot of you have been spreading the word. And when we saw that, both of our hearts were like, oh my God, for us, two guys that love comic books and love movies, dude, mind's blown. So we thank you from the bottom of our hearts for listening to the show, supporting the show. It means the world to us.
Yes, it does. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you all.
And with that, one final note, I will mention a couple shows you guys should be checking out. Night of the Living Podcasts, before I screw up the title, because that's no matter how many times, it's never intentional. I figured I got it right. Let me spit that one out there.
There you go.
Not a Bomb with Troy and Brad. We got Watskip Plus with Jose and Mike. We got Caliber 9 from Outer Space with Rob and Joe. We got Razors of the Podcast. We got a new one, Thrill Me or Kill Me with Ryan. And Death by DVD in particular, because Harry finally got off his ass. I'm busting your chops there, Harry. And he finally released us a new episode. And like you mentioned, it's a good one, man. It's got a great interview with an independent filmmaker. So check that out. And of course, Gentleman's Guide to Midnight Cinema with Sam and Will. So that wraps up again today's episode. We thank you guys for listening. And as usual, it's always a pleasure. We look forward to talking to you next week at the movies.